This is Mirabella's Kitchen, and today I'm making Taleggio and caramelized onion pizza. If you'd like to cook with me, please check the description below for a list of the ingredients and a shout out to my Patreons. This is definitely not your average pizza. It's not something I think we'll ever see on a menu somewhere, but welcome to the adventure. I'm going to start by caramelizing some onions. I'm going to take 3 large yellow onions, remove the peel, remove the root, and cut them pole to pole, which is with the grain. I'm also going to roughly chop 4 cloves of garlic and set it aside. This is for later. To caramelize the onions, I take a large nonstick skillet, heat it over medium-high heat, and add the onions in and put them in a nice flat layer. I then add about 2 tablespoons or so of vegetable oil and coat the onions in it. I add 1 tablespoon of coarse kosher salt and half a cup of water. This water I will bring up to a boil, and once I start seeing the steam escaping the sides and see that the water is boiling, I'm going to cover and let this cook down for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, the onions have wilted quite a bit and they're ready to be caramelized. So I put them in a nice flat layer and let them sit for about a minute and then flip and repeat this process for the next 20 minutes until they start to get really nice and brown and caramelized. Once they start to get darker, I lessen the time from 1 minute to about 30 seconds that I'm flipping them. This process does take a lot of patience. So once they've gone to a nice brown, I want them to be darker. So my secret is I use 1 tablespoon of water with 1/8 of a teaspoon of baking powder, mix that until it combines, cover the onions, and I then keep patting down and flipping every 30 seconds for about another 5 minutes. Thanks America's Test Kitchen for that little tidbit of information. The baking powder really helps brown the onions to a nice dark color, and they get real nice and sweet. I then turn off the heat and set aside. So I'm also going to bake some bacon. I take a baking sheet, line it with tin foil, add in my cooling rack, which I'm using to circulate more air under the bacon to get it nice and crisp, and I'm using 6 slices of thick cut bacon. I'm going to put it into an oven that's been preheated to 375 degrees. I'm going to keep an eye on it until it's nice and crispy, so this is something you have to watch. Once the bacon is done getting nice and tasty, I take it out of the oven and I remove it from the cooling rack and place it onto a paper towel to drain the rest of the grease off of it. And then I layer the bacon and I cut it into pieces. Taleggio cheese will have a pink-orange rind on it. It might even have some like gray-green mold growing. The rind is edible, though it has a distinctly different taste than the actual cheese. The cheese is pretty unctuous. It's very stinky, and it's definitely not for everybody. It was not a fan favorite in my house, but that's part of the cooking journey, and that's what's so exciting. So what I chose to do, I took a pound of Taleggio cheese, I removed the rind, and then I cut the cheese into pieces, and the cheese was pretty sticky. I then take a pizza pan and I coat it with some flour. And I take some more flour and coat the pizza dough. I'm using frozen dough that I have thawed. And I start to turn the dough and pull at the edges in a circular motion. I'm turning it in a circle and pulling at the edges. I'm trying to get it as circular as possible and to thin out the dough. So I want it to be thin and almost see-through, but I don't want it to break. And eventually I got to the point where I felt like I couldn't keep the circular motion going very well, so I tried to put it on my pizza pan and pull out the edges that way, which it was equally as difficult. This is a learned skill, and I am still learning. I add the garlic onto the dough. And I add the caramelized onions on top of the garlic, and I put them in a nice flat layer. I add the pieces of bacon. And I add the Taleggio cheese, and I just go in a circular motion, following around and filling in the bit. This cheese is not for everyone. If you like stinky cheese, I recommend this pizza. I placed the pizza into a 450-degree preheated oven. I initially tried putting it on the bottom rack because I really wanted a nice crisp crust, but my oven would not close fully with the pizza pan on the bottom. So I had to move it up to the middle rack, and I baked it for about 10 minutes, keeping an eye on it because I don't want to completely scorch the crust, but I want it nice and crispy, and I want the cheese very nice and melty. I sliced the pizza into about 8 pieces. You could probably get a few more or a few less depending on how many people you'd like to feed and how large you like your pizza slices. And that's Taleggio pizza. Thanks for joining me today. I make new videos on cooking every Thursday. Please support me on Patreon and on Facebook at Mirabella's Kitchen.